I refinanced it and it was valued at 120k and I got £90,000 back.
Heather Smail, CEO and founder of the Smail Property Group.
And we've produced single buy-to-let properties, source, refurb, and also HMO builds. I do thrive under pressure. I made about 35k profit. You know, you're kind of a little bit institutionalized when you've worked for somebody else all your life. And I thought, right, I'm going to buy an additional 8 properties.
From your first buy-to-let, how did you then transition to more and more?
When I get an idea and when I know something works well, I can run with it very quickly. At the back end of last year, and it went through beginning of this year, sold it for 230,000. Well, I just say don't give up as well. Like, got to keep going.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the CEO Journey podcast, where we talk about all things business and entrepreneurship. Today, I am joined by an amazing property entrepreneur, Heather Smail. She is CEO and founder of the Smail Property Group. Heather, how are you doing? How's life treating you?
I'm good, thank you. Happy Monday. It's been a good Monday. Up early and had a really productive day, and yeah, super good Monday actually.
No, good stuff. And just for a bit of context for the viewers, me and Heather have actually been talking offline about, you know, what she's doing currently, and it is pretty amazing, I've got to say. And I know she's got an incredible story behind her success. And you'd probably admit that you're at the beginning of your journey, and you're, you know, progressing day on day.
Yeah, I would. I feel like I've had a few journeys in my life, and I feel like this is the start of a new journey, if that makes sense. So yeah, different journeys for different reasons, but this is definitely the start of a new chapter.
No, definitely. And Heather, just to get straight into it and just take us back, just briefly introduce yourself, you know, what you currently do and what you're involved in, so that the viewers have a understanding about yourself and your businesses.
Yeah, sure. So I bought my first investment property, buy-to-let property, back in 2010. So that was 13 years ago now. It was this month, it was September. So this is the 13th year anniversary of that one. And the reason that I bought my first buy-to-let was to enable me to create some additional income, because at the time I found myself in a situation that I never imagined I would. And it was a difficult situation. And I had a little sort of light bulb moment where I thought, you know, this provides some kind of security and safety net to secure some additional income for myself and my young daughter at the time. So I only ever intended to have one property, and then I've ended up now with over 40. I currently have 3 elements, I suppose, to the businesses, or 3 businesses essentially. So I've got my own portfolio, which continues to grow. And I have, in the last 2 years, developed a bespoke sourcing company. Now that provides turnkey services to clients in the UK and worldwide. It has grown from strength to strength, and at the minute it's scaling quite rapidly. And we produce single buy-to-let properties, source, refurb, and also HMO builds, multi-unit freehold builds, so blocks of apartments, commercial conversions, and also do things like land sourcing, so sourcing land with planning uplift, things like that, so creative strategies. And then the third business is the training side of it. So through demand, I was asked to become a mentor, which I thought, wow, people, what have I got to teach people? But then I started doing that at the beginning of the year, and it's sold out immediately. I've just got a few limited spaces on that at any one time. And yeah, this whole year sold out within just a few months. And I've got plans to develop that into a more holistic training program with a lower entry price point, so that everybody can access some knowledge and get themselves empowered in property.
Incredible. And you know, you say that you've been through some difficult times in the past. If you just touch on that, was that the sort of motivation to really get started into property and make sure that you live the life of freedom and be able to provide for your daughter?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things that happened to me. I guess I'll start at the beginning in summary. So quite a few people listening to this have probably heard I've been on a couple of other podcasts, and they talk about my early days and the hardships and traumas that I went through that just came out of the blue, really. So my dad became very, very seriously unwell following an operation that went wrong, and that was when I was age 4, and he was never quite able to work again, and we were fairly well off. I was born in 77, so this was like the early 80s. This was when it was a boom time in the UK. Those of us old enough to remember, yeah, it was, my dad's business was doing well, and then he had this operation that went wrong, and it left him seriously unwell. And then that fundamentally changed all of our lives forever. So by age 11, we had lost any kind of savings and safety net that my mum and dad had, and we ended up losing our house. It got repossessed, and we were moved to a council estate in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire, and I grew up there, essentially seeing a different a different kind of lifestyle, really. We was really ill, so we didn't have any money. My mum looked after my dad, and he had 13 operations in 12 years. He was, just amazing that he actually survived that long. And then eventually he died when I was 17, and he was 55 years old, and which was super sad. And my mum then, out of the blue, really, because she was fighting fit, she got cancer, first bowel cancer, and then she got lung cancer, and she died when she was age 60. So I was 23 at that point. And that was a massive, massive loss. It was, my mum was like my best friend completely. We were very, very close. So that was a shock. And then the thing that happened that came, I mean, all of these things came out of the blue, but the thing that nearly, made me question my existence in this world was that my partner at the time, and we've been together since I was 17, so we're like together 12 years, he became unwell, and after many doctors telling him that he was fine, eventually he got diagnosed with a brain tumour, and he was 34 years old. I was 29. And within 2 months of that diagnosis, he had died. And that was, then I discovered that I was pregnant with our daughter, which I discovered 2 days before the funeral. And I was not well. I was just literally not well at that point. I lost a lot of weight. I was like about 6.5 stone, which was, I was just like skin and bone, basically. Could barely function, just felt like I was losing my mind mentally, felt like I was jinxed, felt like it was blamed myself for people like my mum and my dad and my partner dying. Well, he was actually my husband, because we got married in hospital by emergency registrar, which was amazing. Bizarre wedding, but yeah, but incredible nonetheless. And I sort of internalized all of that and was just going through complete isolation and grief. I didn't know anybody who was my age at 29 that was kind of orphaned and widowed, and I started to suffer from anxiety and panic attacks, and it just felt like literally taking my own life. And at the time, I was kind of in a battle with myself, because I was obviously pregnant, and I thought the battle was that I couldn't take my life because it would end my daughter's life as well, the baby that I was carrying. So, but that was a really hard thing for me to digest. A couple of people really helped me through that. My friends that I've had from school were absolutely incredible, and I had an incredible midwife who just dropped like everything to just be the loveliest, kindest, most supportive midwife you could imagine. And then I had my mum's best friend, who was my auntie Margaret. She was not my auntie by blood, but she was my mum's best friend, and she was like, became like a second mum through that period, and one way or another I got through that, and my daughter was born. But then I realised quite quickly I was faced with the problem, because we were young, we didn't have like any massive insurance policies, or we just had a policy that paid off our mortgage, which was relatively small at the time. But I was in this situation then where I couldn't go back to work full time because I didn't have enough people around to babysit, and I was having to pay nursery fees. And I had a good job. I was working as a buyer, but it still kind of wasn't enough to live off and pay for nursery fees and juggle everything. So I thought, I've only got so long before I've got to do something. And what I decided to do was sell the cottage that my husband and I had been renovating and buy a cheaper property. And I did that. And I did that when my daughter was about 2. So this would be 2000 and early 2010. And then released about 100k in capital from that. And then the 100k that I had in the bank, against everybody's advice, because I was just going to live off those savings until my daughter was a bit older and I kind of figured out a plan B. But that is when I realised that if I bought a buy-to-let rental property, I would be able to hold that property, and then after the mortgage payments there would be a little bit extra left, and that would just provide a stable income, or pretty stable extra income. It was only a couple of £100, but I just thought, well, it was better than it being in the bank. So I did that, and then bizarrely it turned out to be an all money out deal. So I paid £79,000 for that property. It was about 9 months to a year later that I realised I could refinance it, and then I refinanced it, and it was valued at 120k, and I got £90,000 back. And I literally did not understand how that happened. It was like, what is this? It's like witchcraft. But essentially, that was the starting point that really opened my eyes to property, and I thought, hang on, this can get really interesting now.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like that, I've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs, and that story has to be one of the most heartbreaking stories I think anyone can listen to, and that it takes a special person to be able to lift themselves up out of that situation and out of that darkness, and to go on to achieve what you have achieved. So I guess, what was the turning point, and how did your mentality shift? And also a spin-off from that would be, if there's a person out there going through grief, whether they've lost parents, whether they've lost brothers, sisters, what would you say to them to be able to really turn their life around and get themselves out of the darkness, as they call it?
I think there was the turning point for me came about, and it wasn't an overnight thing. It was hard. Every single hour was hard, and I remember just walking around like a zombie, thinking, this is just mad. Nothing made sense anymore. I felt like I was a little bit, crazy. And my midwife actually arranged for me to have like a mental health assessment, and a psychiatrist came out and she sat with me and she said, in a nutshell, she said, you're not mad. Basically, you are just suffering from severe grief, and you will come through this. And if it's it can, bizarre things happen to people. It's not you. It just so happens that this has happened to you, but it's not you personally. Don't take it. In some ways, don't take it personally. And that was a bit of a changing point for me, because I realised, because she said, no, you're not going mad, you're just grieving. I was like, okay, so I'm not going mad, I'm just grieving. And it was really small steps. And then it changed sort of like halfway through my pregnancy. I just kind of thought, I'm going to be a mom. I can't leave this world. I've got to look after my daughter. And I've just, I'm not sure, if I wasn't pregnant, I'm not actually sure that I would be here. It was that close, but it puts a different spin on things when you know that you're going to become a parent and you've got responsibilities. And I think looking back, it was, I thought about my mum a lot during that time. I thought about things that mum would say to me if she was here. And just the small things, like if you're not sure what you're doing, or you're not sure what decision to make, just go a walk until your head's clear, and just then you'll come back and, and I always remember saying to me, the worries always come at night, and in the morning then will be that little bit better. And I tell my daughter that now, if she ever gets upset about things, the worries will always come at night. So just hold on until the next morning, and then you always feel a little bit uplifted in the morning. And I would just say to people, and I've had some people that are now clients that have reached out to me and they're going through dark times. It's just being very conscious of every small element that you can be grateful for. And you need a lot of healing. When somebody's died, you need a lot of time to process that and to engineer a way of life that then allows you to live without that person. So just give yourself a break. It's not, people talk about grief as a timeline, and there's stages of it, and I don't think it works like that. I think it's more like a big circle that's around you, and sometimes the circle is big and then sometimes it's really intense, and I actually think that carries on for the rest of your life. And it's teaching. I had some counselling which was really, really good, and my counsellor just taught me ways of recognising what things would upset me and how to mitigate those circumstances, and how to be really thoughtful of your own thoughts and your own thought process. And it helped to be really, really strong. So advice to other people is don't give up. Whatever it's easy to, it sounds like easy to say, but just recognise the small wins that you've had that day, even if that's just getting up and making a cup of tea, or just, getting up at all. Just acknowledge that and recognise it and reach out for help.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I guess, like, would you say that, if you hadn't been through that period, or that trauma, you wouldn't be where you are today? And in a sense, was it the pressure that really allowed you to achieve what you have achieved?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and I've thought about this a lot. I've learned one thing about myself, and I learned this from an early age as well, that I do thrive under pressure. I remember sitting exams at school was never an issue for me, because I would almost, it sounds a bit weird, but I would almost kind of look forward to them, because it's like you've only got 2 or 3 hours. I remember doing GCSEs and A-levels, and you've got like 2 or 3 hours to just be the best you can possibly be. I really thrive off that pressure. So I was never stressed about exams. I don't know if that's a genetic thing or it's just something that somebody taught me. I don't know where that comes from, but I'm still the same now. I operate really well under pressure. And I think that mindset and those disciplines applied to anywhere, anything that happens to you in life are super, super useful. But I don't know if I hadn't have had, I have a different set of circumstances now to most people, and I'm aware that a lot of other entrepreneurs that I know, they've got extended family. I mean, when I grew up, we had a lot of family members, I had aunties and things, and people would always go and see, but they all seem to die off around about the same time. So now I don't really have a lot of family, which in some ways allows me to have more focus and more time. It's harsher, because I only just recently stopped feeling lonely. I've got, certain things that bothered me until the last few months. So this journey is not something that's fixed overnight. It's a lifelong process to learn how to live without these people, but it does it's allowed me to kind of just focus on, I guess, a few aspects of my life and really try and do them exceptionally well.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very interesting perspective.
I guess, well, somebody said to me the other day, sorry, Tom, somebody said, got a friend whose mother just passed away, and they said, they feel like they're moving to the top of the family tree now, so they've got to carry more on their shoulders.
Wow.
And she said, actually, it's really awful but she kind of feels empowered. And then she said, you must have felt like that at such a young age. And I never thought about it like that. But I guess I was pushed into that position where you are at the top. There's nobody else but you. And as lonely as that is, because you still want your mum. Like, I still want my mum now, but you actually operating at that level. And I thought that's an interesting one. I'd not thought about it that way before.
And you naturally become the provider, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And for yourself as well, I think it's that realization that nobody is actually going to help you get out of this mess other than you.
Yeah.
And when you learn that at a young age, you then don't rely on anybody. So I think I had things fire at me from a young age that made me realize that actually there's not many people around. You can't. It's you. It's all down to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess like another thing as well is like obviously a lot of people then find it really difficult to relate to you and to really understand what you've been through, and you have that different mentality, and obviously people can't grasp that really. So did you struggle with that? And how did you sort of align yourself with other people, especially if they haven't been through what you've been through?
That, I think you've just hit the nail on the head, actually, as to, I always felt a little bit different to, like, I always felt like I never quite fitted in. And like, I did fit in. Do you know what I mean? At school, as like, I had friends and stuff like that, but I always felt a little bit like something was missing, or they just, and it's only recently that I've made some connections with some people, like actually last year, that have just been mind-blowing and so amazing, because they actually I feel like they understand me, and I can completely be myself. And they're entrepreneurs themselves. They're business people, creative people, and that is just so refreshing. But I've always felt kind of lonely a little bit because of the circumstances that life left me in.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when my husband died, and there was a group called Widowed and Young. So I went along to, and it's a fantastic group. I went along to like 2 meetings, and basically it was for people that were widowed below 50, and literally everybody in that room must have been 49 years old. And I was there, and I was like 29. So I was like, well, these people are old enough to actually be my parents. So, it kind of still wasn't, you're classed as young when you're under 50, but it wasn't quite enough for me to anybody to relate. And they were lovely people, but it just still wasn't the right place to help me. So it's a very difficult one. I'm not sure. I think I've just come to the terms with the fact that I might always feel that way. But I have a lot of lovely people now, and you get asked to do lovely things like be on this podcast with yourself, which is just amazing. So there's people that pop into your life, and I'm thankful for every day. I'm so happy now. It's, found happiness eventually.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's absolutely amazing. And, moving on from that period of darkness to now obviously doing everyone in your life proud with your property businesses. So you bought your first buy-to-let, which was, from what I can gather, a way for you to generate a bit of extra income, but at the time you didn't know what it really could be. Is that where the bug for property started? And from your first buy-to-let, how did you then transition to more and more?
So, it did. So basically, I worked as a buyer at the time, and I loved my job. And essentially, I'm still a buyer now. So many of those elements, I actually, I do that in my own business. But so we were quite, as a buyer, I had a big portfolio of products to look after, quite astute financially, and spreadsheets and all the rest of it. But I could not work out initially why they'd given me 90 grand back on that refinance. I was like, what? How does this work? So obviously then did a bit of research. You've got to remember, this is 13 years ago, and there was literally nothing on YouTube about property investment in the UK. There was no books around. I think there was probably a few meetups, but I didn't know about them. I didn't even start networking until just before COVID. So I was sat with my work colleague, and we were like, well, what's happened there? I don't know. I was like trying to, work it out. And then it was actually an estate agent who kind of opened my eyes to it. And he was like, this is the process. This is, and then I've realized one thing about myself again is that when I get an idea and when I know something works well, I can run with it very quickly and very quickly become very astute and very proficient at making that model and that strategy work over and over again. So I basically started to, because I got the refinance money back in, and then I thought, right, okay, I'll look for another property, because I think I was net cash flowing about 350 at the time. So I was like, if I get another one, then that will net cash flow me 350 as well. I was single let, and I thought that's cool, because then I'll have 700 quid net, and then I can start doing more and more. So I did the next one, and I think it was the next one that required a bit of a refurb, and then I added value that way. And then again, so I bought it for cash because I had the 90k cash, did the refurb, and I can't remember the figures, but it got revalued, and I left about like 5 grand in there or something, and I thought that's really cool. And then at that point, it started to then build up quite quickly. So I started to, I think I bought another 2. I think there was a year then that I bought 3 or 4, which actually, compared to what I'm buying now, is not that many. But back then I was on a roll. I was still working pretty much full time, and they were all refurbs. And then I bought one project that I was going to let out, and the agent that I asked to come and assess it for rental literally said to me, he's also an estate agent, a good friend of mine that I really admire, and we've been good friends for a long time. He said, this is too good for rental, I can sell this literally overnight. And it was about 5 o'clock one night, and I said, okay. Because he gave me some figures, and I was due to make about 35k profit. So I thought, actually, that's a lot of like £350 net cash flows. That's a lot of them. It's in one lump sum. And that was turned out to be the first flip. And we actually featured in the Nottingham Evening Post as a feature page on the front page, because it was the fastest selling property in Nottingham at the time. So I've got that article somewhere in a cupboard, but it was cool. So he sold it to a first time buyer couple, and I made about 35k profit, which I thought, wow, that's cool. So then I started looking for projects that really needed a lot of work doing to them. And I started to flip more properties, because it was giving me a lump sum, and then I could either buy another rental property with the lump sum, or I could just build up the lump sum. And the difficulty then, the next problem happened in that, because I was in my day job, I was forming relationships with agents, and I'm a people person, so I love talking, and the relationships were good, and they would ring me up and say, I've got a fantastic property that's coming onto the market, but you need to come now, or come in an hour to view it before it goes onto the market. And I was like, I can't get there because I'm a buyer. I've got people meetings, and people coming from all over the country to see me to choose their products. And so that was the next problem. And then the seed started to get planted that I was going to have to give up my day job to focus on property. And I went through 3 years of doubting myself that I would be able to, make a full-time salary from running my own business in property. And I just went through this whole, you're kind of a little bit institutionalized when you've worked for somebody else all your life. You've come from uni, gone straight into jobs, and you're in that corporate world. So that took a lot of getting over in my mind. But it came down to my boss at the time I did not get on with very well. She was quite micromanaging, and looking back, just not a leader at all. And I booked a holiday, and then she refused to let me go on holiday. So I basically just handed in my notice there and then. I just thought, enough's enough. And I was 39 years old, and I'd set myself a target that I would be my own boss by 40. So I made it. But do you know, in the end, the funny thing was, after all that deliberation, it just happened just like that. And then I never really looked back and never really thought twice about it. It was just such an easy thing in the end. And I look back now, why did this take you 3 years of like thinking about it? So.
But you can understand that in a sense, in a way that like that first step is always the hardest, but then after that, everything becomes more free flowing. And I think, especially when, I mean, it's a sense of being uncomfortable, really, isn't it? And stepping out of your comfort zone, as everyone says, to really become the true entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I went through a period, that was be 7 years ago this December, but I went through a period, looking back, I didn't know what was wrong with me at the time. I just was physically exhausted. For 2 years after I left my day job, I kept falling asleep every afternoon. And I'm a really fit person. Naturally, everybody will tell you I've got the energy of about 10 people. And I'd be fine in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I'd just fall asleep. And I used to have to set an alarm to wake me up to go and collect my daughter from school. It was that bad. And I went to the doctor, and I was several times went to the doctor, what's wrong? They did blood tests. I was like, there's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. And now that I'm a bit wiser and a bit older and wiser, I think I was a little bit depressed because I'd come out of, don't get me wrong, I loved going to the office, dressed up, nice dress, high heels, people coming in to see me, loved that world. So that was missing. A bit of the structure was missing. But I think looking back now, I know that I was actually just physically recovering from all of the trauma and stress and just being a single mom and firefighting all the time. I think that was for 2 years. I just felt so tired because I've never done that. I just kind of came out of it and I've never done it since. And full of energy again. It's just so weird. But I think that was just my body's way of healing itself.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And just to take it back to property and that first buy-to-let, I guess one of the key words that you said was refinancing. And a lot of people who aren't accustomed to the property world won't understand what that term means and how useful it is. So if you could just describe what refinancing is and how that allows you to scale, that would be perfect. So the viewers are all clued up about it.
Yeah, no worries. So refinancing is basically when you have bought a property for cash, which is what I did. It's a number of things, but refinancing is essentially getting lending on that property. So getting a mortgage onto that property, whichever type of property it is. So for me, I was purchasing with cash and doing a refurb on the property, which increases the value of the property. And then when you come to get a mortgage on that property, you are going through, the refinance. That is releasing some finance from the property, and it's ideally valued at a much higher value than the price that you bought it for. So a quick example is if you buy a property for 100k, spend 50k on it. So your total spend is 150k, and then you put your refinance in with your broker, and the valuer comes out and values it at 200k. On a buy-to-let mortgage, they will give you 75% of the value that they value that property at. So they valued it at 200k at that point. So they will give you 75%, which is 150k. And that makes that particular deal an all money out deal. And when I say all money out, the house, you actually own it. Yes, you've got a mortgage, but you own it. And it was free. It didn't cost you anything because all the money you spent on it, both purchasing and refurbishing, has come back into your bank account.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is that when you think about something like that, say, for example, the rent is £1,000 and your mortgage costs you 500. These are just, random figures to simplify it for the listeners. You've got then, you paid off your mortgage every month. You've then got £500, which is in your back pocket. That is your net cash flow. But the beauty of it is that it's cost you nothing other than time to get to that point. So the more deals that you can do, one after the other, or when you get bigger in property and you've got more funds available, you can have multiple deals rolling at the same time to produce all money out deals, free, I call them free houses, free assets. You've then got a lot of additional £500 in your back pocket month on month.
Yeah.
And it's not you any other than time. So if you imagine doing, that's one example of one property. Imagine doing that. 10, 20, all at the same time, you are literally creating cash flow for free. And essentially, the majority of my portfolio is built on all money out deals. They all were free houses within, some immediately, some within 2 years of owning them. But then you get the extra bonus of the capital appreciation. So then the capital appreciation kicks in. Some of the houses that I bought 13 years ago are now worth triple what they were worth then.
Wow. Yeah.
So and then you can go through another refinance because you can pull out 75% of the current value, which gives you more lump sums to then play with and create more free assets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe that's when that's the compounding effect. That's key
to scale in a way. And
you know what? I teach people this, and I've got some clients as well that they can't get their head around that immediately.
Yeah.
So some people need to actually have that physically happen to them in property, and then they're like, wow, that's almost like, call it magic or call it witchcraft or whatever you want to call it, but it is pretty amazing.
Well, I think, exactly, because it almost sounds too good to be true in a way. It's like you're basically taking all the risk out of an investment, which is pretty unheard of. So, yeah, I guess anyone would have that, misconception about property investing before they've actually gone into it themselves. So going through that process is probably the best way to truly understand how magical it is.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of lucky that the first property I bought, I mean, I didn't even do a refurb on that one because it was in really nice condition. I just let it straight out. And the original tenant is still in that property as well. So she's like, she's always been there all the time. I was kind of lucky that, I'm not religious, but maybe the universe was just giving me an all money out deal to just focus my mind on, this is what you can do. I don't know. It was, call it luck, call it whatever, but it was an all money out deal. And then I just used that strategy. And now I mean, just recently I've produced all money out deals on blocks of apartments, blocks of flats.
Wow.
So unit freeholds, and they become free. And then it's like, wow, I own now these relatively large buildings that haven't cost me anything. And I'm still gaining net cash flow after the mortgage is paid. And of course, and then the capital appreciation, the value is going up as well. And we do all sorts of creative things now with, HMOs. It's fascinating. I think that's the thing with property. It's like a whole world. There is so much to learn. You get bored of one strategy, or you just think, do you know what? That looks interesting. You can actually just then learn all about this new strategy and then make yourself a master at that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And did you have like a strategy right at the start where you thought like, this is the aim? So, you said that you bought the buy to let, which was obviously for cash flow, but then you've got the capital appreciation, but it was pocketing your money every single month. And then you did flips, which obviously, you gained substantial lump sum profit to then reinvest into whether it be a rental property or another flip. Did you have a strategy or a focus at that point? Do you regret not having the focus in a sense?
Do you know what, Tom? In all honesty, I was in such my daughter was very young. I was exhausted. So I was working, bringing my daughter up in the early years as a mom. So yeah, no, I didn't actually, I'll admit I had no strategy back in the when I first started out, because other than I just thought, right, I'll own one property. I can eventually pay that off. It'll be something I can leave to my daughter, and it'll just give me an extra bit of cash flow per month. And it was better than having the money in the bank at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so tired with like firefighting, being a single mom, going to work. Just raising a child is relentless. It's just absolutely mad. So I didn't even have time to think about what a strategy was. So I was just kind of buying property, even up until fairly recently. I hate to admit that because I sound like somebody that should have known exactly what they were doing, but I don't even I think I obviously did know what I was doing at a level, but I didn't have it mapped out until the last couple of years. It was COVID. When the COVID years happened, that was a bit of a game changer, because I didn't take too well to being told that we had to stay indoors and we could only go out for an hour at a time and that kind of thing. And I then had just gone through a big refinance. We just talked about refinance. So I had done that and I had a big cash pot of money. And I thought, right, I'm going to buy an additional 8 properties this year. And that was in 2021. And I actually bought 13 in that year. And it was just, I just went a little bit crazy, and it was just deal after deal after deal. And I just kept finding them. That coincided with a friend of a friend asked me to help her find a property in the local area up here in Nottingham. And I did that. And then one of my first, I'd say like proper clients, was a lady who I'm still in touch with, actually. We're friends now. And she was a lady in Singapore, an expat in Singapore. And I helped her source a property as well. And that's really the start of the sourcing business.
Yeah.
And so then the strategy started to form. And because I had a massive cash flow boost from the 13 properties that I bought in the year, it put me in a different level. I felt like I'd moved up into a different league, and gave me a lot more security to be able to kind of play the game and then see what I could actually do. And once you feel free and you feel empowered, that's when the fun really starts. So for me now, I'm in the fun times, because I think one of my podcasts was how Heather doubled her portfolio in a year. And that came out 12 months ago, and it's actually doubled again, the portfolio size. And I've got the sourcing business now and the mentorship. And so that's the compounding effect. But that is some of that's down to having a strategy. So I'm very aware now of setting goals. And my daughter's obviously older now. She's nearly 16, and you end up with a bit more time again to focus. And, you're not got like mum every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's that. So you get your freedom back again. So got some really big goals. And I think the biggest win for me, though, has been winning my self-esteem back. That was something that took a massive hit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was huge. I had really low self-esteem. It sounds bizarre for me to say that, but I did. I was always confident deep down, but the self-esteem is a different thing to confidence. And I didn't value myself, and now I've learned to value myself. And then when you value yourself, you can contribute to others better and help them. And it's very much a positive cycle to be in.
Definitely. And for example, where should someone start if they're looking to get into property? As in, there's all these different models. So you've got the property sourcing, you've got the buy to let, you've got the flip, and then you've also got development, which I'm guessing is a lot further along the journey. Where would you recommend, for example, a young person, whether they be 19 or 20, to get started in property and start generating money from it?
So I would say somebody that's 19 or 20 years old that is wanting to get started in property, they would do well to align themselves with somebody local. And I've had students actually at university approach me asking if they can just help me, like assist me with admin or just to be involved in my world, which is super cool. So I would advise education is the big one, and not a conventional education. So try and get involved with networking groups, and you'll find the type of people that you will align with. You'll get a lot of education that way. People will teach you really creative strategies that you're like, wow, I never knew you could do that in property.
Yeah.
Education is the first one. Networking and relationships is the second. And there are creative ways to start to raise finance. I mean, it's difficult when you're young because people want to joint venture with you because you're bringing something to the table. So I think a lot of young people will think, well, what can I bring to the table? But certainly for young people, you've got a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy, and a lot of willingness to assist people that are higher up the tree to benefit them and also gain knowledge from that person. But there are creative ways to raise finance as well. But I actually think, I know a lot of young people are doing like rent to rent models, rent to accommodations, to rent to SA. You can generate cash flow that way. It gets you in with the right sort of property crowd. It gets you into the networks. But I do think deal sourcing is something that pretty much anybody can learn. There are different levels of deal sourcing. You'll get a lot of amateur ones and then you'll get the professional ones. But if you're taught well and you take on, you learn about how to cost a refurb, you learn what works locally, and then you align yourself with somebody who has good relationships with clients, then you can concentrate on co-sourcing with each other. So what I've found is that when you get to my level, you need, I've got people that actually work with me to feed in deals. They don't have the clients at the top end, but they're able to find deals on the ground. And then that's a win-win, because I haven't got time to be running around looking at deals all the time, because, my clients' requirements mean that I need people to feed into me. So, and then it's a split fee. It's, they'll get paid, and it's you can make a lot of money that way quite quickly. Also raise investor finance, but again, they're going to want you to be involved in a project. So that's a bit of a difficult one, but it's very hard at the beginning. It's like I say, I'm 13 years in, and it took me 10 years, really a whole decade, to become established to a level where I was technically financially free. So I was covering all the bills, and need to worry. But then the next year then doubled, and then the next year after that, it just keeps doubling now. So then you become to a point where you are financially abundant, and but a lot of people will, I just say, don't give up as well. Like, you've got to keep going. You'll feel like you're not actually achieving. I come across people all the time on Instagram. I've actually had a few people who I've helped out of difficult situations because they're on Instagram and they look like really big players, because they've got wrapped up in all the glamour of, here we are, and showcase this, that, and the other. And then they've actually got themselves in a mess, and they've come to me for advice. So, in some ways, don't run before you can walk. Just be very in line with the fact that you will need to get your head down and keep working for a number of years to actually make this work. And just don't give up. Just keep going. And it will happen. It will happen. But there's two things, like relationships are the most important one, and being efficient. There's such a lack of efficiency. That's the two key things for me: relationships and efficiency. If you're good at both of those things, you can align yourselves with other individuals that will help you to achieve whatever you want to achieve.
And when you say being efficient, what does that really entail? Is that in terms of working efficiently? Or so what does that mean?
So for me, I was just going to say, I think there's a third thing actually, and which is the most important as well, is integrity. So it's relationships, efficiency, and integrity. When I talk about efficiency, I mean like basic things like, be efficient with yourself. Use your time efficiently, because we can always make more money, we can't make more time, and time's running out for all of us. So get in a routine, get out of bed on time, get out of bed early. So wake up an hour before everybody else does, so that you're able to educate yourself on YouTube by watching property investing videos and get that bit of knowledge. I know some very young people, yourself included, and I know a guy who's 17 who's an absolute beast in his entrepreneurial role. He's set up his own business and he's doing amazingly well whilst doing his A-levels, but he's the guy that gets up earlier than all of his mates and put it in. So it's being efficient with your own time. And don't get me wrong, we've not got to all operate like machines, and we can all have a night off and go and have cocktails. It's just having that discipline and realizing it's a long game. Like, you're not going to be rich in 2 years unless you've created some wild phenomenon that the world goes mad for, which is not likely. So, but when wealth happens, it will happen.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And like talking about discipline and the mental aspect, I guess what differentiates someone who gets to your level where do you say you've got 40 properties or
Yeah, I think
how
it's
many?
42, I think now. I've not had a recent count up. I try and part of me tries to, I don't, part of me just does a little count up now and again, but it's about 42 units now, yeah.
So 42 units to your level, which is obviously incredible. From someone, for example, who gets into property with the sole focus of possibly playing it safe, you know, having that one buy to let that generates them X amount of rental income every single month, and that's safe. What differentiates that person from someone like yourself, and how can someone position themselves to be able to achieve mass scale?
I think it comes down to, and I'm thinking about my clients when I say this. So I've got some clients who actually really love their jobs, and they don't mind the 9 to 5. They like the jobs. They don't want what they determine to be stressful. So they don't want to manage, multiple properties in a portfolio. They've got no real reason to leave their day job. For me, it was all about gaining control of my future, my life. And that was something that I wasn't able to do within my job. So I find that people in some ways fall into two categories. They either want to be free and be their own boss, or they actually don't mind working for somebody else and working within the system. And that's fine. It's understanding your character and who you are.
Yeah.
That's the differentiator when it comes to creating. I've got clients that just want, say, 5 properties because they're quite wealthy, just want 5 properties, and that's going to be in a safe company that will pass down to their children. It's in addition to their income, got no visions of leaving the day job. And then I have mentees and indeed some clients who want to supercharge everything because they want to be, there's this like fire inside them where they have to be their own boss.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me. I think it was just always in, if somebody would have told me when I was younger that actually you're just supposed to be an entrepreneur, I never knew that. But if somebody just said, that's who you are, that's your character, that's your nature. But it took me a long time to realize that about myself, that actually I'm a good leader. I get on with people and I can inspire people and lift them up and make them feel good about themselves and empower them. And I love being my own boss. It's, but I never realized that until very recently. And I just find it so inspiring when I think young people today, there's so many good people to follow on Instagram. It's like I follow Cody Sanchez. She's relatively young. There are some really inspiring people that can inspire young people. There wasn't that when I was, for example, your age. You had to go read a book. We didn't even have the internet. I was at uni. It was kind of a different world. And I think you've got much more opportunity to learn very quickly about yourself. And when you know who you are, that's when you can position yourself correctly to become successful in whichever path you choose.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you like on the flip side of that is also like, what is the problem with scale? Because a lot of people like to coin property, I think, on the internet as well with social media, as like this passive income route, which I think is probably a load of bollocks. But like,
I'm glad you said it. Yeah.
No, definitely. But like, I think it just gets portrayed that, and people fall into that trap, as you've mentioned before. So I guess like, what are the problems of scaling, and how busy does it really get for someone with 42 properties to manage?
So the problems with scaling are, and I'm going through this at the minute with the sourcing side of the business. So it's a nice problem to have because I've got a lot of clients, and at the minute I'm able to satisfy the client's requirements well. I provide a very good level of service, but I want to scale that business so that it's essentially matching deals day in, day out to clients and providing, their assets for them as quickly as possible. So the two things you need to, somebody said to me the other day, you've been a bit like a lone wolf And I'm not a lone wolf actually by nature. I love being around people, but it's kind of just been a bit of a lone wolf journey. So for me now, what's crucial is getting some really key team players involved in the business, and also some system processes. So, and I've just been doing that today actually with a friend of mine, and sorting out some systems that will allow things like automation and efficiencies to be brought in, so that it's learning to sit above the business and not sit on it. And that's the difficulty for me that's happened with the sourcing side. In terms of scaling your own portfolio, for most people, it will be access to funds. If they're not recycling that money and creating those all money out deals that we talked about earlier, you're always going to be leaving some money in a deal. So eventually you will run out of money unless you've got a super fantastic job where you're able to save like 20k a month or something. You're always going to leave money. So it's again, having that education, learning how to price up an all money out deal, learning how to find them, and then building the relationships with the agents or the vendors so that you can essentially take that deal and that deal can become yours, and then recycling the money that way. And then a lot of people raise investor finance. So, I've got some younger people that are all clubbed together and set up a limited company. And, there might be 5, 6 or even 8 of you putting some funds in, and then, developing that way.
Yeah, definitely. Could you talk to us about like the best deal that you've ever made and all the juicy parts that come with it? Like how much you actually made from it, and the process of it, and what about that deal made it so successful?
There's a couple actually. So I tell you, one of the best deals that I ever did was literally an all money out deal, and it was a free house again, but it didn't take a lot of doing. So that was good because it was so quick. I bought a house which was, the vendor needed to sell very quickly, and it was a fall through. So it was a property on Rightmove. It was on the market. The agent rang me, again, good relationship with the agent. So they said, Heather, we've got can you rescue the sale? So I said, okay, I'll go and have a look. And the vendor was in a mess. So I made a cheeky offer. I paid 97,500 for that property for cash, because it had to be cash. He was insistent upon cash. And knowing that I knew the values on that street around about the 130 to 140 all day long. And it just needed because I know a lot about refurbs, done a lot. I just needed minimal work. I paid 97,500, and I did about £1,700 refurb, just minimal stuff, few repairs, decoration. Didn't even need new carpets and flooring, just needed carpets cleaning. They were really nice carpets actually, really superb property. Bought that in my limited company, and then my mortgage broker, people think that you can't do this, and it does change from time to time, but within a couple of weeks we actually put in for the refinance. So we then get a mortgage on the property. Now people think you have to wait 6 months. Now sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, and certain lenders will still lend to you in the limited company within 6 months. You need to check that because it does vary from market condition to market condition. But at the time, which was I think 2 years ago or just thereabouts, no, I don't think it was about 18 months ago actually, they would. So like within the first month, we'd put in for the refinance and it got valued at 135,000. So that was an all money out deal. And I'd literally been in the property twice or 3 times, not really, just sent my decorating team in and the carpet cleaner. And so all money out, and the rent was 750. So that is a very good yield on the property, and it's free, and it didn't take any much effort at all. So that was deal one. Another deal I did was a property where I made £88,000 gross profit, and the purchase price was only 110,000. So again, that was one that I sold in January this year. That was a fall through. So when we talk about fall throughs, we are talking about properties that have sold and then the buyer has pulled out and the sale is falling through. Again, I'd viewed that property about a year before, and it was a difficult property. The agent couldn't sell it. Even at the time, I had about 4 or 5 deals all going through, refurbs on. So I thought, it's a little bit tricky, this one. It takes, do I want it, do I not? Can I be bothered? very glad I did, because it sold twice, kept falling through, sold for the third time, then that fell through, and agent rang me and I said, yes, I'll have the property now, because I noticed the market again, it was shifting. We had a big surge in prices in Nottingham in the space of a year. Some parts went up like 29% capital appreciation in a year, and it was just at the beginning of that. So I didn't even look at the property again. I just said to the agent, is it in the same condition as it was a year ago? She said, yeah, pretty much. So it was pretty dire. It was needed a full refurb. What I actually did was reconfigure the layout. So I created an extra bedroom in what was a garage, and it cost £32,000. It was quite, it was a good budget to refurb on. I know how to cut costs, but we did a lot of work to it. It looked amazing. And then sold it just at the back end of last year, and it went through beginning of this year, sold it for 230,000. So again, that was a good profit, because the actual purchase price, the outlay was 110 and the profit was 88k. So, and the end value was 230. I mean, normally to generate £88,000 profit on a property flip, you'd be looking at spending maybe like 250 purchase price, and then, do you know what I mean? It's not often that you get 88k profit off a house that cost 110,000. So that was a really banging deal as well. And then more recently, just in April this year, I purchased a multi-unit freehold, a block of flats, and that was direct to vendor. That was off market. So purchase price was 500k, and it's 6 flats, 6 apartments. I realised that they were all in pretty decent condition, but the rents were very low. You find this a lot. Retiring landlords, they have kept the rents at the same price for ever. So the rents were low. I was able to buy that property and increase the rents. So 3 tenants have moved out of the 6 apartments, and every time they moved out, did like, £1,500 refurb, spruce things up a little bit. They're pretty decent. It's in a really nice location as well. So Tree Line Road, nice location in Nottingham. And so the rents have all gone up now to nearly £60,000 a year. It's also got planning permission to convert the basement into a basement apartment. And then there's a fairly decent sized outbuilding as well. So that needs a small extension. That'll be apartment 8. But even without that, on the rental income of 60 grand, the value sits at, like, if I was going to sell it today, it would be like 750 and above, maybe even 800 grand.
Wow.
So we're just going through a refinance at the minute. And obviously the value will come out and he'll value that property. It will be on a part commercial valuation, but I'm pretty much guaranteed to get that value about 750 at least. And then if you work that back on 75%, it's an all money out deal. And even with a mortgage on that building, it will still give me like a couple of grand a month net cash flow just from one building.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, that one that really starts to open your mind then, because you think, hang on, it's one thing creating all money out deals on single properties like a terrace house, but then we start to do it on blocks of apartments and then bigger blocks, then I've actually done it, because I bought one around the corner as well. Again, that was direct to vendor, purchase price 350. Similar story, retiring landlord, rents were just a bit low, prime location. Next door has just sold and it needed a refurb. It just sold for 550, and that's next door that's attached to it. It's a semi-detached property. So again, that puts that one at an all money out deal. So
that's insane. That's absolutely insane. And like, one of the key things I'm getting with this is obviously with the refurb. I think a lot of people like skip over this, especially when I'm trying to like learn about property myself. You don't really understand like what it takes to be able to increase the rents or get the capital appreciation to a place where it should be. And I assume that you can have situations where, for example, builders rip you off, etc. You pay too much for a refurb and then your profit is heavily decreased. How do you get the refurb right? And is there anything that you can really put in place to be able to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one. And in some ways, it's more tricky on the smaller refurb projects, because traditionally on smaller refurbs. So say you're doing a terraced house, it's not likely that you will find, or you can find one builder, or we'll call them main contractor, to do all of that work for you, but they'll charge you a premium. So the way that most people do the small refurbs, especially in the early days, is you'll be literally ringing up a plasterer, ringing up an electrician, finding your fee and getting all the different trades in. Now, in the early days, that can cause issues itself, because each trade will blame the next trade for something that's gone wrong. So the joiner will blame the plumber, and the plumber will blame the electrician because they were in the way, and the painter will then blame everyone because the painter's got to literally pick up everything. They're the last person in that building. In some ways, it's easier to do refurbs on bigger refurbs. So, for example, creating HMOs where the refurb comes in between like 150, 180 in price, because you've got a main contractor that's able to turn over bigger projects. That's usually a bit more professional. But it's all about essentially building those relationships, and it's about learning about building work as well. It's knowing when somebody is setting out and doing a crap job, what's essentially not a good job. I mean, I actually, even just a couple of years ago, I employed a new plasterer because one of my main plasterers was on holiday. My other guy was totally tied up, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to reach out again. This guy came recommended by a friend, and on day one, he was setting out his plasterboarding, and I thought, I don't like the way he's doing that, just from my knowledge. I thought, this is a little bit suspicious. So I thought, I'll see what happens tomorrow. And then by lunchtime, he was gone. It was just this shoddy job, and so you've just got to be really, really careful and learn. Go around, like say, if you go to property networking events, some of them will actually do events where they're in somebody's refurb, so you can actually go and visit their project. And that's super helpful. Then you will see a high level of, workmanship, and you will understand what it takes to produce it to a high level, so that when you start seeing trades that aren't working in the way that they should, you will think, hang on, that looks a bit rough, or that is not right. I mean, stuff like first fix, second fix, the order of work, schedule of work, you can look up all that on YouTube now. You can learn about this, and, so get that in your head beforehand. Things like on the bigger builds as well, bigger projects, you've got JCT contracts, which, again, it takes it to that level of professionalism, where the builder is, invested in that project, and they want their reputation to shine through, so they want to do a good job.
Yeah.
It is a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. I mean, me now, for my single refurbs, I've got the trades team, some of which have been with me for like over 10 years. So they all know each other now. They didn't know each other before, but we're like a big family, really. Everybody just, they love being on site together. But for the HMO build projects, they are main contractor. So I've got a couple of build teams that, I've employed and spent time getting to know and seen their work for, that they've done for previous clients, and aligned myself with them.
Yeah,
but it can be a tricky one. I've got a couple of friends who are managing build teams, and just, it can send you a bit mad in the early days.
No, 100%. And I can imagine, it's one of those things where it's not really an exact science. I think luck can play a bit of a factor really as well, with timings and everything. But having those relationships and the education behind you puts you in a far better place than the majority of other people, in a way.
I think it's just setting out your expectation with the builder as well. It's setting out exactly what you want them to do with a schedule of work, and you got instinct as well. I'm very much a person that works on gut instinct, certainly with relationships, and you'll know if something tells you that something's not quite right about a trade that turns up, then kind of just listen to that bit of intuition, because that is literally your gut instinct saying, oh, I'm not sure about that person.
No, no, definitely. I think that's a great bit of insight. And I guess like a final question to end on, Heather, would be what's your overall long-term vision? with your different businesses. And so you've obviously got your sourcing business, you've got your portfolio, and then you've got your training business. Where do you want to be, let's say, in the next 5 years? Where do you want to be at, and how are you going to get to that point, do you think?
So I feel like in 5 years' time, I'm 45 now, so I'd be 50. So I set myself a bit of a target to achieve 50 million turnover by age 50. And I've learned something recently that if you say, like, it's to do with the law of attraction, if you say your vision out loud, then it will come true. So, that's what I want. That's my target. And I think for me, my self-esteem is suddenly, it's got to the right place now. So I'm in a good place and I want to achieve those targets, but also with a view to giving back. So I'd love to be able to go into schools and teach children. This is a real passion of mine, like young people that grow up without finances, without any kind of financial education. They think it really, really affects you. You feel like you're never going to get out of poverty. I just want to. They don't teach you a lot about money in schools, actually. They teach you a lot of things, but not about money to make it work for you, and just practical things, but not just the practical, but the inspirational things, and teach people, the stuff that the rich people actually know, and how to empower themselves and just aspire. And I want to go into schools and teach that to kids that are lost and just don't, come from families where they don't have a lot of finances available. Yeah. You can capture people at a young age. I think that's absolutely crucial. It's taken me my entire life to get to where I am, and I think if you can get there quicker, then that's a tremendous thing to be able to do.
No, 100%. Yeah, no.
I want to just give back as well. So I want to go places. I want to take people with me, and I want to just give back.
No, that's incredibly admirable and inspirational. Heather, I think that's a great point to end the podcast on. I've heavily enjoyed this episode, as I'm sure the viewers have. A lot to unpack, and tons and tons of value in there. Have you got any last words for the viewers? Anything you'd like me to share? I know you've got your training business. They can take a look at that. Maybe if they're highly interested in getting started into property, I'd definitely advise them to get the education. And you seem like the perfect person to be able to provide that.
Yeah, I would say that property is a fantastic vehicle to gain your freedom. And I think entrepreneurship as a whole is just a wonderful world to be in. I think there's so many opportunities for young people now to just go straight into entrepreneurship. I've had people that are deciding if they actually want to go to university or they just actually want to have a mentor. And I know that's big in America. Like, people actually just pay for mentorship. It's much more of a thing over there, and it's becoming quite big here as well. But I would just say read a lot. Actually believe in things like the law of attraction. Get your self-esteem fixed. Like, just work on yourself, work on your own goals, work on your own integrity, deploy discipline into your life, and just show gratitude for the small things. Expressing gratitude for the small things, that will then align you to be able to achieve the bigger successes. And don't give up. Like, it's it's small steps, but keep taking the steps. So it's just that consistency. That is the consistency of self-belief.
Yeah, no, definitely. And self-belief, consistency, never giving up. They're like 3 key aspects to really, really succeed. So if you're a person out there who's applying that to the daily life, trying to grow the business, and just keep doing that, as you've heard from Heather, it's the only way, and it's the best way to really grow and succeed. So yeah, no, thank you Heather for all that useful advice and everything. I'll plug your Instagram and your socials in the description so the viewers can check you out. I know you produce a lot of great content on there for people to follow, especially in the property space, but outside of that, whether it be personal development, etc. And yeah, just a massive thanks for coming on. And to all the viewers out there, you know, please like, subscribe, comment, and go give Heather a follow, and make sure you're supporting, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.